Hi, welcome to Fahrenheit Performance Podcast, episode number 53. Today we have Philipp Kloeber. Is that how?
Kloeber.
Kloeber, German, Australian, now in Singapore, right? I would call you a super age group triathlete, very high level. You've just come back from the World Championships, and 70.3 is your game, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin, for also having me. Really pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I'm Philipp, and
Philipp with two P's, right? No, two P's. Two P's at the end.
Two P's at the end, and and one L.
But you've been living in Singapore for how many years?
Approaching 7 years. And as you can hear, I'm originally from Germany, but haven't lived in Germany for nearly 15 years now.
Okay.
So I very early in my life I developed this passion for Asia through scuba diving. So we did a lot of traveling with my family here in the region. And I remember with 13, I learned how to scuba dive in a small island called Moyo in Indonesia. And
so, particularly Southeast Asia, you would come just to scuba dive.
Yes. So my father was a banker for Commerzbank, and every 4 or 5 years we had to move in Germany, and sometimes also my parents were separated location wise, and for us to make a family time, we traveled to this part of the world, and and during one of these trips, I learned how to scuba dive, and that kind of stuck throughout my entire childhood, and always wanted me to come back to this region. Yeah. So when I approached university, I first studied international management in Munich. And I had a specialization in Asia Pacific, which allowed me to move to Shanghai in China just before the Beijing Olympics. Initially, just for 3 months. For doing.
But 2008.
Yeah, 2008, 2007, 2008 to do an abroad semester. But I loved it so much in Shanghai that out of the 3 months became 1 year. I was able to extend my stay through an internship with a German medical devices company. And I was also studying Mandarin at that time. And the company helped me to move into Suzhou, which was not as big as it is. It was already big, but it was not as big as it was now. And so I came back to Germany after one year. I had a massive reverse culture shock. I could not blend into. We were living in Munich at that time, and I really could not blend in anymore, and really wanted to move back to Asia. And after I completed my bachelor studies, then, which was just before the Lehman Brothers collapse, kind of the world changed. It was very hard to find work as a bachelor. So fast forward, I was able to study at the University of Melbourne. Had an offer there to pursue master studies in accounting. And I was.
So at least you're in the neighborhood, right? Not quite Asia, but only a few hours away.
That's true. I mean, I had never been to Melbourne before I actually went there, and I was told it's actually like a mini Asia.
It's very multicultural, right?
And extremely. And when I arrived, I was really fascinated that actually it felt like having all sorts of Asia in like a very concentrated part of the world. And I did my master's then in accounting, and thought after that I would go back straight to Asia, but actually I out of the 2 years became 8. I worked at the University of Melbourne for 1 year as a assistant tutor and research assistant, and then after I had my permanent residency, changed to industry. Started as a graduate in forensics at Ernst & Young, and was traveling all over Oceania and APAC with my job. But nevertheless, and I also met my wife, which obviously also was a big factor in me staying longer in Australia. My wife is Thai. She was pursuing a doctor degree.
PhD?
PhD in
medical doctor.
PhD in in education at
Okay.
Monash University.
Okay.
And yeah, so after that, and after me finishing my manager degree in Melbourne, I had the opportunity to move to Singapore, and I always wanted to come back to Asia.
Yeah.
I jumped on that opportunity, and 6.5 years ago, came
So
over here.
your triathlon started in Melbourne then, right?
Triathlon really came into play when I was a runner.
Okay.
I mean, I always loved running. I loved scuba diving, but in the initial years of my professional life, we also had to spend quite a bit of money on my wife's education for a degree. So I really never was able. I loved triathlon. I had already followed it from the peripheral, but I couldn't afford it really.
Oh, it's a super expensive sport, right? Just the entry fees alone are expensive.
Yeah, it seemed very far away, and I have always thought about these people who finish like I am. It's like, wow, that's so crazy. This is so far away. There's no way I could ever.
Australia is such a triathlon country as well. There's so many triathlons and there's so many triathletes, and just the beach and swimming and running and cycling is just you're right in the middle of it all, and then you couldn't quite do it, but you wanted to, so
Yes.
it's sort of lit the fire to start training something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So from running, my wife had a big gym complex at Monash University, and they had a swimming pool, they had a bunch of indoor bikes, and they also some sort of a running parkour around the campus.
Yeah.
So my triathlon journey started swimming in the pool a little bit.
Yeah.
It was awful. I mean, I could barely swim 50 meters without being completely out of breath, with no technique whatsoever.
Okay.
I was then doing.
So it's got hope for the rest of us. If you start as a complete newbie, not knowing how to do anything, but and that's relatively speaking, that's only 8 years ago, right? No, 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, So I used that 8 years ago, the swimming pool to start the first swims. I used indoor bikes to do crazy long indoor sessions.
Yeah.
And then also running around the campus. At the same time, I mean, the way I discovered triathlon for me was through Rich Roll, who is quite of a is a podcaster, but he also is a very famous story in the endurance world, and he wrote a very famous book called Finding Ultra, which I was reading at the same time as I got into, going beyond running and starting to swim and starting to cycle. His story of going from Stanford swimming to being a corporate lawyer on a partner path, then falling into a big hole with alcoholism, which luckily didn't apply to me, but I saw some resemblances there, then turning vegan and rediscovering his an endurance sport roots, and then becoming a fully devoted triathlete, doing all sorts of things.
So it's like your roadmap to what you sort of saw yourself as wanting to do.
Exactly. So this book really, or there was that book. Then I wrote. I read Scott Jurek had a book. Dean Canassis had a book on ultra running, ultra marathon, and led well 100. And it's like kind of this combination of stories that made me want to. Or Born to Run was another book
I read that book.
that really wanted me to explore this world of ultra endurance. And for me, with the means I had at that time, my wife's gym at Monash University was the starting point. And then from there, 8 years ago, as you mentioned, I bought a bike. I bought my first very simple TT bike, a Merida Warp.
Okay.
Very, very basic, but still very good bike. And, I still remember getting that bike without any fitting whatsoever, just manually adjusting the saddle.
I think, in the early days, it's just the first step, right? It's just getting that bike, and then you make the most of what you can. You slowly outgrow it, get the next one. But if you never make that first step and get that first entry level bike, you're never going to get the next one, the next one, the next one, right? So, and then fast forward 8 years. Now you're doing 436, 443s. 503, 70.3s. That escalated pretty quickly. What was your first race, and then would you call yourself a runner? Like, you're pretty fast half marathon.
I mean, 8 years ago, I just learned how to click into a cleat. I
didn't
remember
for the swim either.
Monash University was holding myself with one arm against the wall, with the other was just trying to click in and click out. And it took me another like 6 months to figure out how to ride properly on air or bars. But yeah, as you said, from there, we more or less moved to Singapore right after that. And I would say my triathlon journey really started in Singapore.
Okay.
And it was like this mix of year-round weather. You can train, and I met Alan Bradley, who was at that time in integrated riding.
Yep. Okay.
And that's how I met a number of my other training friends as well, and that's how I started to properly cycle on regular basis outdoor around the island.
Yep.
Then I started to swim first on my own. I had condo pools, had constant access to a pool.
Was it exactly 25 meters or exactly 50 meters, or was it like 43?
20?
Yeah, more. I hate condo pools for that.
But ours is it exactly 20? And then from there I went to swim smooth. So I had like training with Colin and Shea. And yeah, so kind of it went. I hadn't done my first 70.3 yet. My first 70.3 was in Bintan in 2019. And yeah, so running was something that always I was doing anyways. So I had some sort of base endurance, I would say. I wasn't fast by any chance, but I had enough endurance. And then 2019 came.
So how did that first 70.3 go?
I mean,
under 6 hours.
It was 5:48 or something. Nothing special, but after that I was absolutely hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. First of all, I mean, there was a lot of my friends were there, and Nick Glover was someone I trained with quite a fair bit at that time. He mentored me a lot. I didn't even know Arjun yet. So Arjun, one of my best friends in Singapore, in and outside of triathlon, and I mean that race, just the vibe of the people.
It's almost it used to be almost like Singapore's home race, just because it's 45 minutes away, and it's the only race that was close by. Because Desaru didn't exist back then as well, right? So so all the Singaporeans would be there.
I mean so that experience was although the time wasn't that fast, but I already knew that I wanted to do better and I wanted to improve, and that was exactly for me.
So what was your secret of just reducing from 5:48 or 5:40 down to the 1 hour basically cut off in the next 5 years or so? Is it just consistent training, or was it something that you actually one or two things that you did that made a big difference?
So I think absolutely number one is consistency in training. But I reached a point where I couldn't help myself anymore to improve. So after Bintan, I did Bangseng in Korea. In Thailand.
Oh, that's right.
Just a few months later. Before that, I had also trained with Jürgen Zek, Z coaching in Phuket, just as group training. And I only by being there for 2 weeks, there were like so many things Jürgen and the other athletes told me that I can improve immediately in terms of like technique, training sessions, and so on.
And sometimes like you go there for a training camp or something, right? And then just being in the ecosystem, you understand where all these pieces of the puzzle fit together. Like, I mean, nutrition, it could be recovery, it could be consistency, or it could be the way you do a swim in the morning or cycle in the afternoon, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it takes something like that just to solidify or glue everything together, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the key factors were, I would say, so I did Bangseng and I also improved there by like 10 minutes. But after that, I felt like kind of, okay, I don't know how to get better, but I want to get better. I feel I have much more to improve. Then COVID came and
no races for 2 years or a year.
No races basically, but Singapore, I mean, it was like I travel a lot for my work, and all of a sudden there was no travel for work. Kind of my days, my work is quite erratic. There is no structure to my day. Like it can go either way of the extremes. So like nothing to like full on, and kind of any plans I'm doing in advance, I have to throw out of the window. But with COVID, there was like kind of a stableness coming to my life, which allowed me to like hey, let's do a more structured training plan. And I asked Jürgen if he can be my coach.
Yeah.
And he agreed to it. And we have since then, and that was, I think, April 2021. Since then,
So he's been
one coaching relationship.
He's been your personal coach.
Personal coach.
He does all your training plans. He sort of gives you
everything. Yeah, everything. And so I've been through the COVID time. We trained through through Training Peaks. I bought like indoor bike. I bought bike trainer equipment. I even bought a treadmill. I mean, that's a whole separate. Sorry, I'm not sure. We should discuss that here now. But yeah, I have treadmill. I have like my own bike trainer.
So if a zombie apocalypse happen, you can still train in your house.
Correct. Or the condo pool. Just trying to figure out how to get that into your apartment as well, but it's a different story.
So then, did you find that the one-on-one training is like super helpful for you?
Yeah,
It keeps you accountable, or is it actually something that you really needed?
I think what my strength is that I don't need much external motivation. Like I don't need a race to motivate me to train. I train because I love training. Not because I have something in the calendar and I have pressure to perform. And I feel that really set me up well with Jürgen, who is also a strong believer in consistency, in high volume, hard training, a lot of easy training, but also very, very hard sessions, and almost like 80-20 rule, but this consistency is a concept that applies really, really well to me. So I felt him giving me the training plan, it helped me in a lot of ways. First of all, it opened a whole new world for me of like how to improve, not only running endurance pace, but doing intervals and also like stretching out my week. Because it might also be because of my job, but I tended to put too much load into the weekend, and then I would go into the new week too fatigued, and I needed like 1-2 rest days before I could pick it up again. So he helped to kind of rejig all of this, the training plan, and build sessions that fit around my work life, with the time I have, and the goals I had. So, I mean, we set some parameters and some goals, 70.3, improving from the time I had. I think I was like 5:25 after Bangseng. Obviously, swimming was my absolute weakness at that point in time. Like really awful. Like if I could hit 2 minutes, that was great. With crazy efforts, I couldn't properly kick. And although I come from a diving background, I'm very comfortable in the water. Very I would never get nervous in the water. But I had zero technique to freestyle swim, and also no endurance in the water. And then also having, obviously, Jürgen is famous for his biking. So having like really structured bike trainings, indoor and outdoor.
So how many hours a week did you start, or are you doing these days for training?
I would say around 15, just structured training, but it can go up to 20-22 in very, very intense weeks. I would say his hours around 14 to sometimes 18, and then of course you have and that comes later. I was also injured a couple of times. Mobility exercises, a little bit of strength training, a lot of stretching. That comes on top of that. But I would say on average I land at around 17 to 18 hours per week.
Okay, and you just qualified, or you literally just landed back from Tato a few days ago, right? Everyone has been telling me how wonderful that course was, how great it was. You did a 5:03, which is almost half an hour off your PB, but still a good time. How did the race go for you?
Okay, so Taupo, similar to Lahti, I did World Champs in Lahti last year as well. Both very stunning courses, nature-wise. I mean, the swim in Taupo, and you will hear that probably from everyone else you're talking to that's been to this race, is very unique, very clear, crystal clear water.
But it wasn't so cold. Like I would have thought it up in the mountain, up in the hills, sort of this snowy areas, it's going to be
Yep.
really, really, really
I
cold.
thought so too.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I mean, the water temperature-wise, I think it was warmer than even what the locals expected. I think more normal is around 16-ish, 17. We had 19.5 on the race day, which was, I think, just comfortable for wetsuit swim. I mean, you would obviously feel a little bit of coldness on your face and in your hands, but otherwise was absolutely perfect. That said, if the air temperature on the day was quite okay as well, I think we had 14 degrees or so, but 2 days later it was extremely windy and no sun, and then you immediately have like 5-6 degree less, and then it's then you feel cold.
Yep. So swim, it was clear water. Did you have a good swim?
I had my personal best swim
Okay.
on that course, although it's it's lake water,
Yeah.
so lack of buoyancy, but we had currents as well. I had no one
Currents in the lake.
We had I think there's a new specific, it's not because there's rivers flowing into the lake.
Gotcha.
We had currents. I had no one to draft. I still managed to pull off my best time in there. I was really proud of it. I'm really proud about that.
Because you're not the swimmer, right?
Swim, I have to say, I train 90% of my swim in a 20-meter condo pool, without any training, without any peers or any like person correcting
That's
me.
very hard as well. When you don't have someone in front of you or behind you to sort of gauge your effort, it's quite difficult to do.
I mean, I have the technical, like you have form goggles now that can help you with AI and technique to real time correct you. That has really helped me. But yeah, still this element of like form correction on the spot is something I only get once in a while in Singapore if I have time to go to like Swim Smooth or cross coaching, or in Phuket, for example. So swim went extremely well, very happy. But then on the bike, I had probably my worst ride under race conditions, due to a number of reasons. And I don't want to find many excuses. I think it goes really, the root reason for my performance on the bike is that I'm not a strong technical rider.
Okay.
That I really need to work, and I have been working on for a while now and trying to find out ways.
As in, like, if it's a windy or a hilly course or many U-turns, is that what you mean by technical rider? You need getting in and out of the aero position, and so
I think staying in aero position on like more challenging road surfaces, more winding streets downhill is something that I'm not strong at. Might also be one of the reasons I had a very bad crash in Davao last year. I still have like a kind of a
see.
the road of Davao tattooed into my skin. That might has done something to me that I don't feel like I have full
It's a bit of a
anxiousness
yeah.
when you go really fast down the hill to stay in aero, and then you had in Taupo you have very like shippy
it's not the
uneven roads.
not as smooth.
So you have a lot of rattling all the time. You had some not heavy, you had some winds. That might have contributed to it. I felt also quite cold the first hour out of the water. It might have, it was a long season.
Yeah.
I was definitely not at my potential, even with all of that.
But it wasn't that it was you didn't come off the bike it was a hard bike, right?
No.
So did that help you on the run? Did you do a good run after?
I did So but the course was stunning. I felt like the organization was fantastic. I still enjoyed the ride. I mean, I maybe also I didn't put a lot of. Usually, I put a lot of pressure on myself for a race. Phuket is one. I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that for this race because I did intentionally want to give myself the chance to take more in of the race.
Maybe you were talking around how beautiful it was, and
not as bad, but yeah, maybe it was a little bit of it. But yeah, anyway, so I did arrive quite strong for the run, and I really felt I knew already before the race this could be a course for me to do a PB.
Yeah.
Which would for me be something like 1:35. First of all, after like 3 or 4 kilometers, I had to stop for like 2 minutes. I had side stitches. I think I drank too fast of the water. that was gone. And the course was actually hillier than I thought. I did even practice one. I didn't notice that actually it had some
Quite a lot of elevation.
punchy climbs. Yeah, it was not a flat course. It was rolling for sure. But anyways, I still did a 138 there.
I think
It's quite okay.
I think the most humbling thing about the World Championships is that a 5:03 would get you top 10 in any race in Asia, right? You know, Cebu, Langkawi, whatever. You came 297 in your age over the 5:03, which just means it's because it's the World Championships, right? And everyone there is the top 5 of their races around the world.
Yeah.
It's just so it's such a different environment where it's like you're in the big leagues, right? Because you didn't have a bad race, and you came in like middle of the pack, but in any other race in the world, it would have been like a top 10, maybe top 20.
I think so. I mean, I honestly, I knew, even if I had performed at my absolute best with like a bike, let's say I could have done 10, 15 minutes faster on the bike, I think my potential would have been there somewhere. Swim and run, okay. I think I was very well within my capabilities at the moment. Bike, I underperformed. I think I could have, I did 218 in Da Nang 2 years ago in torrential rain. So, of course, this would have not been a 218 course, but I would have thought like 225, something like that would have been possible. But even then, I would have not.
Top 200, maybe.
Yeah. Who cares if it's 250 to 200?
Yeah.
That's not really what it was about for me. But yeah, as you said, I mean, the caliber, obviously, of talent there is very high and is also hugely inspirational. To see that.
It's like you and your tribe. Everyone there has done the same as you.
I found though even more inspiring than that is if you look at the age group for like 55, 60. I mean, the best times were like 4:30 plus, and that is that's hugely inspiring to see that at that age you can perform it at such a level.
A lot of people don't realize that they think that it's going to get easier as you get older and everyone's old, and if you can maintain the speed, you can do better in your age group. It's actually the reverse, because all the people that are the weaker athletes, they'll drop off, and the ones that are left in your age group are like tough as nails that have been doing it for 10, 15 years, right? So the easiest age group is probably the 18 to 24-year-olds where there's no young triathletes because it's an expensive sport.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, you do see now, I think still when I started triathlon, you had someone has a strength in one sport, right? And then they build the others up. But now you have people that are starting triathlon at a young age. They already they have no weaknesses. I mean, you see that with the younger professionals.
Yeah, they like full gas star.
They do all three.
They run 110 half marathons, which for 99% of the population can't even do that without the swim and the bike.
Yeah.
Right. So, one thing that we do have in common is that we both use purpose. I've got custom purpose jerseys. You have a custom purpose.
A number.
Right. I saw that you had Sea Shepherd on there. What's the story with that?
Yeah.
It's like a skull and crossbones, or it's like a skull and a sword, or something like that, right?
So, Sea Shepherd. So, goes back
Sea
to
Shepherd is like that. Is that boat that follows whaling ships or something, right? Is that correct?
Sea Shepherd is a marine conservation organization that focuses on protecting, conserving our oceans. And it was an offspring of Greenpeace initially, with the idea to be more pro-action oriented, which means they have a fleet of vessels and they would go on the oceans to help enforce law where otherwise it would not be enforced. Yeah. And initially it started with hunting down the Japanese whaling fleet that were engaging in illegal fishing practices. But it has extended since then. I mean, now they're focusing on illegal fishing practice, for example, in Antarctica, where certain nations fish for krill, which is the feeding ground for whales and other marine lives, and is a huge risk for destroying.
Is that just like something that's dear to your heart? How come you put on your tricycle?
Yeah, so for me, diving has always been a big part of my life, which has taken a little bit of a backseat now because of triathlon takes up all my time in my life, also of my professional life. But I always felt so. I was on a diving trip 7 years ago with my wife in the Andaman Sea off Khao Lak.
Okay.
And it was also a trip to show my wife how to start diving.
Yeah.
And we went there, and we were both shocked how empty the oceans were there, that were actually made to be full of biodiversity and fish. And we were in the middle of nowhere, somewhere between Burma, Thailand, and India.
Yep.
And we had these massive fishing vessels at night that were illuminating the sky and just having these massive nets on how to catch everything they can from the ocean god, like without any care or whatsoever.
Sad, isn't it?
And that really made me think after this trip, and it made me really upset actually. Also how helpless I am as an individual to change this. And I was reading on about it. I was watching a whole bunch of documentaries that came out at that time, and I came to the result that well, first of all, I learned about Sea Shepherd, where I also learned that becoming vegan, having a plant-based diet, has the biggest impact as an individual can have to help change this. So Sea Shepherd, from there I started to support as an ambassador. That was before triathlon, so I was initially helping with like beach cleanups and doing like contributions. But when I started triathlon, I always felt I wanted to connect this together because triathlon is a sport that's done in nature, outside.
In the ocean most of the time.
Part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it. Also, but also lake life.
Yeah.
So it has the water component, and I felt that the triathlon community would be good to target, making them more aware of what Sea Shepherd does. And that's how I worked with Noah initially, because I was also always wearing, since I landed foot in Singapore, Paris was also always very close to me for training, for triathlon. So I asked Noah, can we do a suit that has somehow embodies this logo?
Yeah.
And I asked Sea Shepherd, can I use your logo?
Okay.
And they said, yeah. They sent me the media kit. I have since then also been in very close touch with them through this.
Yeah.
And then we developed this multiple iteration of it. We developed the initial suit with the Sea Shepherd logo on it.
Yeah. You just mentioned that you're vegan, right?
Yeah.
And how did that affect your training initially, and how do you incorporate that now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But at the starting point was that diving trip.
Yep. So from then it was like that.
From there it was it was from there that kind of set off a process. And actually this book I referred to earlier, Rich Road's Finding Ultra, talks a lot about this as well.
Yep.
So I said, okay, I want to do that as well. And I mean, you have to imagine, it's not as simple as you think to just say, I'll turn vegan today, right? So cutting out, I started cutting out. My wife followed along, so we both admit to this. We cut out red meat first, and poultry and fish. Fish was the first, Fish was the first, then red meat, poultry. And then we moved on. Dairy was the last, because I'm super heavy coffee drinker, and I found like taking milk out of my coffee was very hard for me to do.
Okay.
But yeah, and there were a lot of back faults where I felt like, what do you replace it with? All of a sudden you don't eat all this stuff. You're in the office, your colleagues ask you for lunch, and then you come up with your being. They say, well, whatever, what we're going to eat. And they don't have anything in the menu. So I had a lot of times where I had to fall back. But I would say within like 3 to 6 months, I knew what to replace it with. I knew where to get it. People had like accepted that I'm doing this. Although it's always a polarizing topic, especially it was always like, I was getting a lot of heat for it. Anyway, so that went on. At the same time, I noticed that it had massive impact on my health. Yeah. So I felt I had more energy. So that means I felt I had more energy to train before work, for example, to get up earlier, to train and not feel completely fatigued, and then also be able to do it the next day without like feeling sore. I felt like that was less. I felt clearer in my head.
Did you pay particular attention to protein intake and like eating more legumes, maybe, for example, to supplement that?
I went to our house. I don't have a thyroid, and for that reason, I have to visit a doctor every couple of months for blood tests. And I asked that person, if I, as a transfer to a vegan, is there anything I need to? And I told her what I'm eating, which was predominantly whole food, plant-based. I mean, as a vegan, doesn't necessarily mean you're eating healthy. You could eat chips and drink beer all day, right? And you would not get any nutrition value out of it. But my approach to this was mainly whole food, plant-based. So as close to the source as possible, as colorful as possible, unprocessed. And Melbourne is a great location for that, by the way. A lot of really cool restaurants.
A lot of gluten-free options there as well. And
you have some places like Veggie Bar in Richmond, like really cool restaurants that I discovered that I would have never found if I hadn't been on this journey. But that doctor told me then, actually, the only thing you need to replace B-myelin is B12. But B12 is something that you also, as a non-vegan, have to be more mindful of, because as we kind of go to this industrialization of our food, it's an element that's not really naturally found anymore in any food, except for like cornflakes and unless you eat something that dirt out of the ground. So B12 was the only thing I replaced, really. Everything else.
But you found you had more energy and you had less fatigue, which is
I lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I lost really.
I can imagine you'd lose weight.
I was training. I mean, I also did weightlifting before. I was quite buff from that, but I immediately lost weight, and also because I went endurance sport, of course, as well, but also because of the diet change. I felt more energy, better mood, a clearer head. At work, I felt I had more concentration, especially after lunch, because I wouldn't fall into like this
food coma.
No, I wouldn't. This is amazing.
So far so good.
I mean, I never had any illnesses per se, so I can't really talk about all of a sudden I don't have that anymore. But overall, I felt from like I tried this to like, this is amazing, kind of like, and I discovered so many like, wow, why didn't I eat this before? This tastes so good. To like, this is the path I'm 100% convinced of.
Yep. You have a pretty high level full-time job, right? And you're saying that's very extreme sometimes. How do you stay motivated to keep training when it's so much easier when there's such a stressful environment, right? To just go home and sleep on the couch, right?
I feel, so first of all, I'm a very hyperactive person by nature. Okay. I was hyperactive as a child, and my parents could barely hold me on my seat. So I always need an outlet for energy. But with endurance, I think it's very complementary to my work. It's like yin and yang, and I feel both benefit each other. The sport gives me the mental grit, resilience, energy to go into my job the best possible version.
Does it clear your head at the end of the day to, like, if you have a particularly stressful day and you go for a run?
100%. I mean, yeah, sometimes I'm glad I go for a run. And stay, like, sometimes you just have so much stress in you that you need to let it out, or and to reset yourself, or you have things in your head. And I'm a type of person, I tend to overthink sometimes, and running gives me the ability to just let go. I mean, there's nothing, and you probably would have heard it many times, but there's nothing a 5-hour bike ride or a 2-hour run can't fix. I mean, if you can't solve a problem within a 4-hour bike ride, 2-hour run, or 1 hour swim, you probably can't solve it. And it's sometimes the best solution is to just let it be and just stop like thinking about it and revisiting it later. And endurance sport forces you that. It forces you to stay away from your phone, from your laptop. You just focused on the next step, nothing else. And you're just engaging with nature, your body, and that's it. And that has helped me tremendously in managing my energy, managing my performance, resilience. I work in a very high stress job, and it's not a career many pursue longer than for a few years. I've been in this now nearing 12 years. and I would have not been able to sustain it that long without this lifestyle, to be very honest.
There's others who's burnt out from doing the same.
But it's also, I mean, I deal a lot. I have to deal a lot with people in my job, and I have to do. Sometimes the work can get confrontational, it can get very stressful. Or you have to also build relationships. And if you are that person that's always tired, worn down, stressed out, I mean, no one wants to hang around. But if you have someone who has energy, who can portray themselves, you know,
and is focused,
in the moment, and that's exactly what the sport gives me. But at the same time, I have to say, my work also gives me something that the sport doesn't really give me, which is the analysis evaluation part. I like to think, I like to solve problems, I like to engage, and I feel it also helps me sometimes to let go of the sport. And that is quite a good mix for me.
Yeah, man. Before we leave, I guess you started from a complete newbie, and now you're quite elite in 70.3. What would you tell yourself 8 years ago as knowing what you know now, as a newbie to new triathletes out there?
I feel, and that's maybe also something that applies to me. Like, stop being perfectionist about this sport. It's really like failing your way to success almost. Where
so consistency over trumps motivation.
I think I see a lot of people also that get into triathlon and they buy all the equipment and they aim for doing the specific time or qualify for Kona. They reach it, and then that's it, and then they're gone, and they have all these bikes and everything sitting in the corner, or they're not motivated, and out of a sudden you meet these people again 6 months later and you think, what happened? And I feel to avoid that you fall into the situation, I mean, it's important that first of all, before you start triathlon, you have an inner passion for sport that's not motivated by how good your bike, how fancy your bike is, or what race you sign up for. It's about, are you happy with tying your shoelaces at 6 a.m. in the morning and knowing it pisses down and you go out and you love it, right? It's like counterintuitive. It's like, who the hell would want to go out now? But
that's what Leanne Sito, a few episodes ago, she was totally like that. She's aircraft engineer. She's in the motor, sort of in the fixing airplanes, and then she's a professional triathlete, right? And that's what she said. She just loves training. She burns the desires there. It helps her clear her mind, and she just always it makes her feel that's her happy place, is the training, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not like that, if you dread the training, then
that's it.
You might get 1 or 2 results, but then that's it, right?
Yeah, so it's about loving actually the process, stopping being a perfectionist, which I also guilty of all the time. I have to say.
So when you mean stop being a perfectionist, like every workout doesn't have to absolutely nailed, but you need to get the workouts done.
Yeah, it's about maybe failing here and there. Maybe you have a bad race result, or you're not maybe as strong in one of the 3 sports, and then giving up. Like, for example, for me, I felt like triathlon, I start from scratch, and it's a failed safe zone for me and I can build a skill set from 0 to where I am now and beyond, right? And I found that's absolutely fascinating that you can do that. And that's what motivates me. If I see where I've come from, for example, in swimming, where I am now, that is really the motivating part. But it's not a straight line. This is not a straight line. You might, improve, then you make out of a sudden it's worse again, and you ask why, and
for no particular reason as well sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
and maybe you also get pressure from outside because you're spending a lot of time on training, and people don't say where are the results and this and that. But don't let that detract you, your motivation. I feel like if there's something really rewarding in breaking through these barriers over time by repeating the boring stuff over and over and over and over and over again, and at some point you're reaching the next level. That is extremely motivating. Figuring that out, and I feel that's really the crux of the sport. And what the tip I would give newbie, if you don't enjoy this sort of style, then triathlon's probably not for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the consistency of the training is where the biggest gains are. There's no secret pill, you know. You're not going to suddenly jump so much better by doing one thing. It's stacking as many things on in this side, on the good side, and then they'll all contribute to the results.
For some people, it might work. Not for me. I mean, for me, it's like painstakingly really improving tiny bit by tiny bit all the time.
Okay. So what's next? What's next for you? What's Philip? If I talk to you at the end of next year, what have you?
Yeah.
What do you got planned?
That's a very good question. I'm in the process of thinking about it. I do think I will still do a fair amount of 70.3s next year. I do have an eye on making dipping my toe into full Ironman.
Okay.
But I haven't figured out what a good timing for that is.
Have you run a marathon before?
I have.
Okay.
I have in Melbourne. Yeah, I loved it.
So you know how far it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't chosen an Ironman race.
I haven't yet, but it will come. But yeah, I think there's a few courses in ASEAN I really feel I have not performed to my potential yet. I want to perform. I want to improve my running in heat. I want to improve my bike handling. But closely with my coach, I continue improving in swimming, and yeah, I haven't locked in the races yet for that.
Okay.
But yeah, as I said, I think the goal for me is really to just improve in the 3, and then the races. Do
you feel like you have a lot more to improve?
A lot
in the 3.
I think for me, I've been asked many times, "What's the end game for you in triathlon?" I don't have an end game. For me, I will stop with triathlon if I feel I don't have the desire to improve anymore.
Okay.
That's in short what motivates me is this constant. I mean, I love the sport and the training, but this constant idea of improving is what drives me.
Okay, man. So my last question is always, how do people get a hold of you? It's Instagram, Philipp with 2 P's. Kloeber, right? PhilippKloeber.
That's
correct.
It, yeah.
Philip, thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for
for
coming
having
in. I will catch up again soon. Okay.
Absolutely.